So, I was talking with some of the other inmates about a bunch of dumb shit, and our conversation naturally turned into a discussion about the geopolitical state of the world. The verdict? Shit sucks. Anyway, we eventually arrived at the topic of most important events in human history. Was World War I more important than World War II? Was the American Revolution more significant than the French Revolution? Do I really need to ask that? Have you seen France? The inmates and I have meticulously compiled a list of some of the most important events in human history, trimming the fat and reducing it down to the events you'll see in this video. I won't be ranking them in absolute numerical order. No, ladies and gentlemen, today I'll be putting the events into tiers because everybody loves tier lists. The criteria for selection was very difficult. I had to take into account historical value at the time and of course how much of an impact that event still has today. I then assigned numerical values based off various other criteria and then plugged them into an advanced algorithm created by another inmate who goes by the name Grease. The results from the algorithm will tell us what tier they go into. Also, before we start, I just want to say that most of these events are a little more modern, not including shit like mankind creating the first spoken language, the creation of the first tool, or man discovering fire. Let's just say that for the most part, this is mankind's most important events after, 1 AD. Speaking of AD, I will not be including any sort of religious events that are specifically laid out in their respective text, for example, the life and death of Christ or the life and death of Muhammad. While they do carry great significance, I've decided that it would be best to leave them out. However, you would have to be a total fool to not acknowledge and understand just how important they both are in the scope of human history. Last thing before we start, I am not a historian. I am just a dude, a prisoner to be more specific. Obviously, if you made a list like this, it would probably differ drastically. Trying to include every crucial event throughout human history would take an actual expert and way more time than I'm willing to commit. So, remember, this is just my opinion, so don't take it too seriously. With that out of the way, let's begin. First up, nice and simple, we got Apollo 11 and the moon landing. Alright, so this was pretty big. The Russians had sent Sputnik up into space in 1957 and got all of America in a panic. So, JFK retaliated in 1961 by declaring that America would send a man to the moon and return him safely before the end of the decade.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
JFK unfortunately never got to see his vision become a reality, but all in all, America showed those Ruskies what was up, and Buzz, Armstrong, and that other guy all made it back safely. I'll put it in book-worthy. What? It should be higher? Hell no. Space blows. You want to know what's out there? Nothing. Mankind should finish conquering the Earth first. Last time I checked, we still got about 70% that needs to be fully explored. The Kraken is real. Okay, next up is the polio vaccine. You know, vaccines have been the new hotness lately. Everybody's getting them. Oh, just stab this thing in your arm and you're good. Kind of. You just now have a chance of dying from the thing we put in your arm. Also, you can still die from the thing it's supposed to protect you from. Now, I'm not a smart guy. In fact, some would say I'm a dumb guy. But even I know that 2 plus 2 doesn't add up to 4. Just saying. Anyway, this was a vaccine that mattered. You ever see the results of polio? You get a one-way ticket to a lifelong cruise in the iron lung. So thanks, science. Into the documentary tier you go. Alright, here we go. The fall of Rome. Most people should be familiar with the fall of Rome and why it happened, so I won't go too into it. But basically, Rome was essentially the center of the world for a while. They had the biggest empire the world had ever seen up to that point. Rome's eventual end resulted in a power vacuum in Western Europe and led to what many refer to as the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages. It was a time that many believed to be lacking in scientific and cultural advancements. However, this isn't entirely true. Monarchies rose to power, feudalism was a thing, and the church became the dominant force in Europe, for better or worse. We also got the flying buttress, which was essential in creating some of the sweet Gothic architecture during this time period. If you don't know what Gothic architecture is, just think Bloodborne. We also got some of the Crusades during this time. There's a lot more that can be said, but Rome probably gets talked about enough, and I don't want to be here for the next 10 hours. The Roman Empire and its collapse in the West is our first Will of God tier entrant. Next we got Martin Luther and his 95 Theses. So this was important because the Catholic Church wasn't being very, cool back then. You see, the Catholic Church placed the church itself as the end-all be-all when it came to religious authority. This was easy for them to do at the beginning, because not everybody was literate. Only those in the church knew what the words of the Bible said, so the unwashed masses just had to believe what the church officials told them. You could see how this would be problematic. Their word was law, and if you were a follower of Christ, then you had to listen to the church absolutely. They were also being cringed by selling indulgences out the ass. For those of you that don't know what that is, an indulgence is essentially buying your way into heaven by reducing the amount of time spent in purgatory. Luther and his boy Augustine said that nah, only God himself could decide who goes to heaven, not the church. So, Luther nailed his 95-page shitpost onto the door at Wittenberg Castle Church and pieced out of there. Only a man this dripped out could have the confidence to pull off such a power play. Alright, this one kinda just has to go in the will of God tier, right? No. I will now proceed to subvert your expectations and put it one tier lower. Plus, I'd be down to watch a movie about The Rock shitposting on the front door of the Catholic Church. From the darkness comes the light. Thus, we've come to the Renaissance. Now, unless you've been living in an actual hole, or your teacher looked like this, you probably know what the Renaissance is, or at the very least have heard about it. It was a time of intellectual and artistic rebirth in an otherwise ignorant, smelly, diseased, and war-torn Europe. It started in Italy, where artists, scholars, and scientists would change the way that people thought about, well, everything. They promoted the second coming of traditional Greek and Roman values, and they created some of the greatest works of art that mankind has ever seen. This would also be a time of great scientific revolution, as people such as Copernicus and Galileo would fundamentally alter how we view our world. The invention of the Gutenberg printing press also helped spread information around the continent in a much more rapid pace than before. Overall, the Renaissance, while important, isn't something I'd put near the top of this list, as some historians debate whether or not it was really all that different from the Middle Ages. So, I'll put it in book tier. Alright, something a little more modern here, the creation of the atom bomb. The atomic bomb is one of, if not the most deadly weapon that mankind has ever created, the other contender being seed oils. Don't believe me? Don't take my word for it. Ask the Japanese. My fault. I don't really need to speak too much on this, as it should be apparent why it would be on this list. Nukes are the great deterrent, and they've made everything boring. Nobody's gonna do anything too crazy to anybody, because everybody just has nukes now. It's no fun. Now, countries just fight proxy wars and put tariffs and shit on each other. Everybody having nukes is like everybody having superpowers, and when everyone's super, no one is. The world is in a strange position. At any moment, life as we know it can be sent into a burning hot oblivion for some dumbass reason. Because of its potential to destroy all life as we know it, creation of the atom bomb is going in the highest tier. Speaking of the destruction of life, next up, the invention of gunpowder and its use in weapons. If the two most destructive creations birthed by mankind are nukes and seed oils, then gunpowder is the third child. You know, the one that's spoiled and gets all the attention? Gunpowder, and more specifically guns, essentially put the power of a cannon in the palm of your hand. Soldiers no longer needed to charge in with dinky little swords, praying that they didn't get skewered by their opponent, only for their worries to be irrelevant as they were crushed by a giant-ass rock flung by a trebuchet a mile away. Other than nukes and air power, guns have fundamentally changed the way wars have been fought. They're also the go-to tool for hunting and self-defense. Unfortunately, they've also caused much grief and needless loss of human life off the battlefield. But hey, gunpowder also gave us fireworks. Always look for the silver lining. The influence of gunpowder is gigantic, and I can't imagine how the world would currently look without it. S tier. But what's scarier than a gun? A plague. More specifically, the Black Plague. Huh, let's see. A plague that wiped out anywhere from 30% to 60% of Europe? Count me in. I'm thinking movie tier. But too bad you didn't finish the job, Plague. B tier you go. Never leave a job half finished. Time for one of the true chads of history. Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire. An easy movie tier. No need to beat around the bush. Genghis sure didn't. He dove right in. I mean, look at this man. It's like a gravitational well for pulling women. Could you really say no to this guy? And even if you did, he ain't listening. I'm gonna stop. My fault, y'all. Anyway, the Mongol Empire was huge. It was the largest empire in terms of land size the world had ever seen. They even took over China and established the Yuan dynasty, the best dynasty, if you ask me. Apparently, 1 in every 200 men around the world are descendants of Genghis Khan. Saying the man was a monster would be an understatement. Okay, staying in Asia, we got the Meiji Restoration. Before the Meiji Restoration, Japan was ruled by the shogunate and the samurai warrior class. They eventually had enough of all the fighting and figured that it would be better if they had a more centralized government to protect themselves from foreign influence. Ironically though, they would end up modernizing and westernizing many aspects of their country anyway. Japan would also go on to form their own national army, something that would, let's just say, have repercussions down the line. Overall, the Meiji Restoration enabled Japan to shoot up in the global power rankings and wedge themselves in as a major player on the world stage, but not major enough. So yeah, pretty important event considering all the shit it led to. So how about B tier? Alright, moving on. The October Revolution. In 1917, Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks overthrew the Romanov dynasty and replaced it with communism. Before the October Revolution, people in Russia were starving and having a bad time, but after the revolution, they were still starving and having a bad time. Also, this happened. Yeah, so this is what all these college kids want to be implemented. You know, you could just off yourself instead, right? No need to take out everybody with you. Anyway, for leading to the deaths of millions and making all these dipshit kids super annoying, F tier. F for failed, failure, and will fail with each attempt. Speaking of commies failing, next we got the Miracle on Ice. For those of you unfamiliar with this great moment in sports, the Miracle on Ice was one of the greatest underdog stories ever. A ragtag team of shitty college hockey players and some amateur minor league players completely atomized the Soviet juggernaut hockey team in the 1980 Winter Olympics, preventing them from winning their 5th gold medal.
You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow, up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
Yes I do. Movie tier. Go watch Miracle and educate yourselves. Alright, I'm getting tired, so let's lightning round this shit. Revolution in China, F tier. See Tiananmen Square and Uyghurs. Spaniards invade South America, B tier. Smallpox is OP. The Industrial Revolution, A tier. Look, we have machines and shit now. Invention of the toilet, C tier. We don't technically need toilets. C, India. That thing crawling out of the ocean, F tier. Yeah, I know I said events after 1 AD, but I'm making an exception. Fuck this thing. Newton discovers gravity and creates calculus. Screw you, Newton. You made my school life so much more annoying than it needed to be. Should have discovered some bitches instead, you literal virgin. Blow me twice. Aunt Jemima getting a rebrand. Yo, Aunt Jemima was like a second mom to me, but not in like a lesbian kind of way. She practically raised me. When I was a kid and I started learning how to cook for myself, one of the first things I remember making was pancakes and eggs. When I plated everything up, she was right there, on the bottle, smiling at me, as if she was proud of me for learning how to cook for myself. I'll never forget you, Aunt Jemima. And I'll never forgive you, Quaker Oats. I'll take my maple syrup money elsewhere, F tier. The birth of the internet, S tier. But because of social media eventually coming around, I'm putting it in F tier. The creation of chinampas, A tier. Easily one of mankind's greatest inventions of all time. World War I. Trench warfare was boring, Germany got shafted by the Treaty of Versailles, America received its first World War gold medal, B tier. World War II. Now we're talking. Hitler invaded Poland, France got beefed, Japan got beefed twice, America received its back-to-back gold medal and became the dominant superpower of the world. S tier. Alright, we'll slow it down since we only have 4 left. First up, the French Revolution. Now look, I hate the French as much as any normal person, but the French Revolution was a pretty big deal. The will of the people was on full display as they rose up and overthrew King Louis XVI and implemented a new form of government. It didn't go as smoothly as they would have hoped, with the whole reign of terror and Napoleon plunging Europe into more conflict, but regardless, the effects of the French Revolution would be felt for years to come, and honestly, it still affects the world today, so A tier. But if you want a real revolution, then look no further than the American Revolution. Little colonies smacked the shit out of them dirty redcoats, whooped them so bad they had to make up that silly little accent. For the first time in history, a colony was able to successfully declare and then win their independence from an empire. But I gotta give thanks to the French for backing us financially, and also the Native Americans for inspiring us with the type of guerrilla warfare that helped us win. We eventually paid back the French in World War II by freeing them from Nazi occupation, and we paid back the Native Americans by, ignore that. Ironically, the Vietnamese used guerrilla warfare against us later to great effect. Can't win them all, anyway, for leading to the birth of one of the most influential and powerful countries the world has ever seen. S tier. Next up, we got a shockingly descriptive and foreboding look into the future, when a certain social activist, thinker, and Roman centurion gave his 2070 paradigm shift speech to a crowd of over 800 million people. It's safe to say that the world has never been the same since then.
Guys, what's the one problem right now that's not going to be around in 2070? The elderly and the disabled. Because we're just going to kill them. We're just gonna kill them. So we looked at the data.
Only time will tell just how accurate this mysterious man's predictions were, but for now, I'll give it the respect that it deserves. B tier. Alright, last one, ladies and gentlemen. Throughout history, there have been many dynasties, some worse than others, but by far, the greatest dynasty ever witnessed by man was so powerful and dominant that they would strike fear into all those around them. They would also be loved and celebrated all around the world. I'm talking, of course, about the 90s Chicago Bulls winning 6 NBA Finals, 2 three-peats, led by this man right here, Michael Jordan. There is no greater feat witnessed by man than the Bulls tearing through everybody's ass, ripping their competition not just 1, not 2, but 6 new holes. Yeah, going to the moon might have been cool, but last time I checked, Buzz never did this.
Green light, tic tac toe go. Here we go. Red means stop and green light means go. Common sense drop, cause I truly love the hip hop. I even like to beatbox in the morning. I'm usually yawning. Then I'm kicking crazy rhymes until the break of dawning. Cause I know and you know a gun goes boom. But you didn't know I'm funky like a project hoe. Oh yeah, to the honey slide the number. Cause when it comes to skins, I lay my pipe like a plumber. So watch out, cause I'm the type of crazy man. First I slam, bring in the red light.
S tier, no question. And with that, we've reached the end of this completely educational and totally not biased video. I don't know how you managed to make it to the end, but good on you. I hope you learned something. Maybe now you can pass your history test, or at the very least, stunt on your teacher with some knowledge. Anyway, I wanted to do a Soul Hackers 2 review, but I got the idea for this video right before it came out. Now that the game has been out for a few weeks, I kinda just wanna sit back and play it in peace. I have some other ideas for videos I might try, so if you liked what you saw, stick around, there's more to come.